Hey, I'd like to thank Marina for being one of the early adopter conference producers and program directors in the IIR team, including Megan, Paula, Deborah, and others, who see the value of the engaged patient's voice at the table of leaders in the clinical trials industry. A gutsy move because, as Forrest Gump says, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes we patients experience adverse effects, or as in my case, experience relapse. So recently I began a new schedule of twice-weekly chemotherapy infusions that has caused my immune system to meaningfully weaken. My doctor suggests that staying off trains and planes for a short time, so I can't be with you at this important meeting at the Harvard Club in New York. Because of HIPAA compliance and noisy equipment, I'm probably going to move this to another venue because this infusion room is not the ideal location for recording a video. Well, welcome back. It is the next day. I didn't just change my shirt. I was losing my voice yesterday in the infusion room where I thought it would be interesting for you to see what happens in there. I think it's critically important to include the patient's perspective in the planning, development, and implementation of clinical trials. Their real-world experiences are invaluable and should be considered not only in your clinical and research assumptions, but in your business assumptions. I'd caution you that most patients are no more expert than the man on the street about many of the topics that you'll explore at today's meeting and at future industry conferences. Be careful about some of the so-called government-funded, patient-centered groups that vote on how and where to spend research dollars and tell you to change your research methodology. But many patients can give you some great perspective about their experiences participating in clinical trials. I'll admit I'm not your typical patient. My career was an institutional investment research analyst who after diagnosis became a research advocate, a type of patient advocate focused on the technology, the business, and legislative work. Somebody once described me as a one-man band with a very loud drum, who leverages the power of larger advocacy groups. I'm a member of the American Association for Cancer Research, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, the Drug Information Association, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, the Rare Disease Legislative Advocacy, the Research Advocacy Network, and I'm co-chair here at Dana-Farber of the Patient Family Advisory Council. There are far too many more to mention, lest you think I'm some kind of nutcase. I'm one of the few patients who attend 15 to 20 conferences such as Partnerships in Clinical Trials, and I participate in all 3 days. I scare my doctor when I talk about tyrosine kinase inhibitors. I scare my doctor when I talk about the downstream effects of histone deacetylation. I scare lawmakers when I testify about how we can improve health care. Knowing what I know now, I would have gone into biotech rather than high tech back in college and when I was in the Navy. Yours is a very noble, very helpful industry, and you're the most regulated of all. It only takes 1 or 2 idiots to give you a black eye. Okay, maybe those erectile dysfunction commercials every night on TV with 2 people in separate bathtubs, one of them having that 4-hour problem, really hurts the perceptions of biopharma and life sciences. In high school, you were the kids that kept your heads down, focusing on getting the right answer, while the rest of us were honing other skills. Most of you other nerdy types, you know who you are, and I thank you for that. I was diagnosed with a rare incurable blood cancer in 2007, and all the literature and web search information indicated an average 5-year outlook after treatment began. Mine is a lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma called Waldenstrom's. Mine happens to be very active. However, this is an indolent blood cancer. You're probably familiar with the concept of the e-patient, the educated, empowered, engaged, enabled, emancipated, and experienced patient. When you're told you have a rare, incurable blood cancer, fear can motivate you to act. The conventional chemotherapy of nucleoside analogs and alkylytic agents was producing the unexciting 5-year historical outlook. I felt forward-looking, exploring what's in clinical development and clinical trials, rather than what was behind door number 3, was the best option for me. Targeting at the molecular level just seemed to make more sense. It's no secret that the two primary issues in clinical trial development are safety and efficacy. The promise of personalized or precision medicine, which comes to us from what we've learned in genetics and genomics, is not yet fulfilled. Again, we're close, but the empirical approach, where you keep trying until you find what works, is gradually being replaced by molecular diagnostics that isolate diseases into patient groups that will respond to certain therapeutics under the guise of the right patient, the right drug at the right time. Personalized medicine is a game changer. Many of the older assumptions about clinical trials are no longer valid, yet many of the myths and misconceptions persist. Still less than 5% of cancer patients participate in clinical trials. This means that 95% get the standard of care. You're familiar with the myths, perhaps coming from TV and the movies, that clinical trials are a last resort. I'm reminded of Love Story when rich father Oliver says, "Can't we get Jenny into a clinical trial before she dies?" There's also the misconception that insurance won't pay, or they're only available at larger hospitals or larger academic institutions, or you're a guinea pig. The clinical trials industry has to do a much better job educating primary care physicians, who are the first point of contact. There are many regulatory issues centered on patient privacy, such as HIPAA, that are standing in the way of better epidemiological studies. Again, yours is the most regulated of industries. How often have regulations kept you from talking to patients like me? I've never once got a thank you card or a Christmas card for the 6 clinical trials, now about to start on my 7th, from a single biotech firm. Yet, you want to talk to me, but you can't. The off-label marketing issues continue to get in the way of more options for patients with rare disease. There's a need to move more swiftly within the FDA. Programs like Fidesia are helping, and we need to get other regulatory approvals sooner. Have you seen a perfectly good therapeutic killed and major investment lost because of adverse effects? It just seems to me that we need to fess up more and be more open about potential adverse effects. SEC regulators preclude collaboration between competitive biopharma firms. Legal and compliance lawyers balance risk versus gain, and I think we're becoming more risk averse. Institutional shareholders are keenly interested in return on investment and protected investment capital, specifically intellectual property. Now, engaging patients is a two-way street. Don't be afraid to engage patients to help this industry. Helpful not only educating lawmakers, but helping you prepare new economic models. This industry is completely missing creating new financial models. Your actual cost, your burden cost, your cost of CapEx, your profit margin assumptions, I believe, are completely wrong. The industry couldn't even sell the much-needed oral chemotherapy parity legislation, which shows oral chemotherapy is substantially less expensive than IV infusion chemotherapy. Again, your most powerful voice in engaging lawmakers on your behalf are patients, especially those passionate, credible advocates that range from moms trying to save their child's life to the senior who is surprised to learn about the donut hole that gives the government an out in providing the full pharmacy coverage that they expect under Medicare, or the senior who can't get the necessary care because the therapeutic is not on the CMS formulary, or a veteran like me who recently found out he can't get the therapeutic because it's not on the CMS or VA national formulary. The solutions include the oral parity bill, which has been passed at about 25 states, but it needs to be passed at the federal level to include Medicare. There's also step therapy or fail first. This is an incredible time waster for doctors where a patient is required to get the lower cost solution, even if only a few pennies. This is a major healthcare cost that's unnecessary. There's a looming biosimilars legislative issue which can allow private or government insurance providers to get between the patient and his or her physician, who may be forced to choose a lower cost biologic agent based purely on the therapeutic cost. Maybe we patients can explore regulatory and compliance issues with your legal team. We must find ways to satisfy the requirements of the regulations, but look for ways to get around them when a common sense decision is at hand and the regulations are not keeping up with the technology and the state of the art. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to squeeze in a few words, perhaps a few minutes longer than expected. I look forward to meeting you at a future meeting or perhaps on the road. If you'd like to contact me, see my website at jack-whelan.com. Thanks very much.